let's start. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this health webinar tonight. My name is Göril. I'm the host tonight. And tonight's topic is close to many people's hearts. Cellular health for preconception, pregnancy, and postnatal. And this is certainly a topic that's very close to the heart of the lady we have with us today. Welcome, Margie, all the way from Australia, getting an early start this morning.
Yes, thank you.
Welcome. I've had a pleasure to get to know Margie a while back, and I'm so happy to have her with us today to share her knowledge. Just for all of you, we will open up for questions later. So please save up all your questions, put them in the chat, or open up your mics after and ask Margie. So we will have a conversation with Margie today. And just the way we live today, so the way we live and the way we eat influences us at many different levels. And the changes in the food industry the last decades and the way we grow and farm food, the processed and the ultra processed foods are something that really affect us down to cell level. And Margie, you are very experienced in the field and the topic we're gonna talk about tonight. So you are an IVF nurse, a midwife, and a hypnobirthing educator. And could you please share with us from your experience and knowledge, so why is cell health so important when it comes to these topics? It's pretty broad, but we're going to touch on preconception, pregnancy, and postnatal. So please share your experience with us.
Thank you so much. And yeah, it's an absolute pleasure to be asked to talk to the group this evening. And it certainly is a topic that I'm passionate about. I've spent my entire career in this area. So I'll just give you a little bit of background on where I've come from, and then we're going to be talking about cellular health. And I want to, emphasize why we're talking about that in this area. So I've been a nurse for 35 years now, and the majority of my career was actually spent in the birthing suite. So I've been a midwife in delivery suite, and that was like my main passion, to support people through the journey of having a baby. And I've also worked in childbirth education. I've had the pleasure of working in the United States. I've worked in the Middle East, and that was all in delivery suite. I then also moved into the last 14 years of my career. I actually moved into the IVF space. So I got to experience and really start to see trends with people who were struggling to have a baby. So it was really an interesting area to be in, because as we know, with the lifestyles that we're leading, and as you said, Göril, the foods that we're eating, we now know that the root cause of a lot of chronic degenerative disease is pointing towards inflammation. And the same too is happening, what we're seeing in the world of infertility. So I'm really excited to share with you my knowledge, and I didn't want to give a PowerPoint presentation. I just wanted to make it conversational, because I think when we're out and about and we're talking to people who we're coming across, it's really good to just have those conversations and say, hey, I was talking to Margie and she told me this, and you can share these experiences. So I'm going to give real live experiences as what we've seen in the infertility working in IVF, and how we've been able to support people improve their outcomes with the use of improving cellular health. So I know in Australia, our statistics, on average, 1 in 6 couples are actually experiencing infertility. And I think the statistics are pretty much the same in the UK. And for me personally, when I got introduced to Zinzino, and that was almost 2 years ago when Zinzino came to Australia, and we don't have the pleasure of having all the products. We have only the balance oil and the skin serum. So when I got introduced to Zinzino, I was actually taking an omega supplement, and I was blown away, because the product that I was taking wasn't affecting my cell membrane. And in fact, the ratio of omega-6 to 3 was nowhere near where it should have been. So I'll explain that to you in a moment. But because I was so astounded with what this product could do, I started to share that with fertility specialists that I had been working with. And it wasn't long before I actually tested all the fertility specialists, and no one had met the correct ratio of omega-6 to 3. And I'll explain what that is in a minute. So I started to share the product with them, and those that took an interest, we started to use the product on the patients. So the topic, as we've said, is cellular health. So I want to talk about that because I don't think we're having enough conversations about diet and nutrition. And I really think that we need to be having more conversations about how do we prepare to be able to conceive? How do we prepare to have a healthy baby, and how do we prepare to have a healthy pregnancy? So we certainly have a lot of conversations around how not to get pregnant, certainly when we're growing up. But in my opinion, there needs to be have more conversations. So when we've got statistics, we've got 1 in 6 couples who are experiencing infertility, we definitely need to be having those conversations. So I'm just going to have a drink. So when we're talking about cellular health, I really want to explain to you what that means, because the miracle of conception actually starts at a cellular level, and our sperm, our eggs, the embryos, the lining of the uterus, everything has impact at a cellular level, and we exist as a collection of cells. So we need to understand what a healthy cell is. And each cell in our body has a membrane that surrounds it, and that membrane needs to be in balance. And when I talk about balance, I'm talking about essential fatty acids. So the ratio of omega-6 to 3 needs to be in balance. And both those are essential fatty acids, meaning that they're essential to the cellular health, and they're essential that we need to consume them. So it's not something that your body will create. And in our modern day diet, we're actually consuming far too many omega-6 and way too few omega-3. And I'm not going to get too deep into the omega-6 and 3, but I do want you to understand that the omega-6 is sourced mainly from vegetable oil, corn, and soy. And if they're in too high amounts, they become pro-inflammatory. And with omega-3, we source them mainly from the marine source, from algae and fatty fish. So mackerels, herring, salmon, sardines, or flaxseed and chia seeds. So the majority of our diet today is consisting of processed and ultra-processed foods, and we are laden with omega-6s. And so when we have a diet that is high in omega-6, that affects us at that cellular level. So when we're trying to have a baby, if we have too high omega-6, then we're in a pro-inflammatory state, and that can play all sorts of havoc around the art of conception. And our body needs to work in homeostasis, and it's constantly in that battle to try and bring it back into balance. But if you've got that silent chronic inflammatory condition there, then that is going to cause all sorts of problems. So the ratio that we're aiming for is below 4:1. Now, that's a World Health Organization. And sadly today, the majority of Australians are sitting around 20:1. And I just tested one of my hypnobirthing mums yesterday. We were having a class last night, and her ratio came back at 30:1. So we had a great opportunity to sit down and talk about what the effects and the impact that has on her pregnancy, the baby, and the health outcome of her child. So how do we do that? How do we actually test someone for that? And how do we know what your cellular health is? So Zenzino have got an incredible tool that we are using, and it's a very simple test. So this is the ability to get a window into your cellular health and understand, are you sitting in that optimum range? And if you're not, I'll talk about the consequences in a moment. But this is such a great tool to use, and it is just a dry blood spot test. So it's like a glucose test that everyone would know. So it's a finger prick blood test. We're just testing the fatty acid of your blood. The test goes off to an independent third-party laboratory, and the analysis is quite detailed. So the report comes back in about 2 weeks, and we're looking at your ratio of omega-6 to 3. We're seeing, are you in balance? Are you at risk of chronic disease? Are you needing to reduce those inflammatory markers so you can go on and have a easy conception and have a healthy pregnancy? So I think, number one, we should be having conversations with women and asking them, have you had your omega-3 index checked? Have you had your ratio checked? And certainly in my area of infertility, what we've come to see is one of the biggest challenges that couples will come across if they've been trying to have a baby and they haven't had any success. They may have had some miscarriages, and then what's happened is they've ended up getting a referral from a GP and ending up in an IVF clinic, and they have had blood tests, maybe surgical intervention, and it's coming up, they're being labelled as unexplained infertility. And this is really difficult for couples to be feeling settled with, because they're left with so many uncertainty and questions that are asked, well, hang on a second, I'm fit, I'm healthy on the outside, I've had all the investigations, but why is it that I am having trouble conceiving? So I want to talk to you about a case study so I can give you some live examples of what we've seen and what we've done with the Zinzino balance oil in these couples. So the first couple that I'm going to be talking about is Jessie and Max. And here's a young couple in their late 20s, and they'd been trying to conceive and have a baby. So they'd been trying for about 6 to 7 months, and they hadn't had any luck. They did end up conceiving, but then went on and had an early miscarriage. And then by the time that I had the opportunity to sit down and have that conversation with them, they were looking at going down the path of having further investigations and potentially having an IVF treatment. So we sat down and we had a chat, and I said, have you had your cellular health checked? And that's actually a really foreign concept when you're talking to people, because they, what do you mean? And I said, well, did you know that we actually now can check your cellular health? We can have a look and see what's going on at a much deeper level and look at the inflammatory markers, because we know that inflammation can cause so many chronic conditions, and perhaps that's just an area that we can touch on. So we sat down and we tested Jessie. Jessie's ratio came back at 26.6 to 1, remembering we want it down at 3 to 1. And her husband, Max, his ratio came back at 21 to 1. So both of them had extremely high inflammatory markers. So the first thing we did, we said, well, okay, stop the process of trying to conceive. Let's sit down, let's have a conversation, let's talk about your diet, let's talk about what you're doing, let's talk about your stress levels, let's talk about the other things that are going on in your life. And I said, now's not the time to conceive. We want to take control, restore your cellular health so we can ensure that you can go on and conceive and have a successful ongoing pregnancy. So of course, the first thing we did was introduce the balance oil, and the balance oil is an omega-3, and it's in a lipophile polyphenol. So it's in an extra virgin olive oil, which is not like your average omega supplement. Your average omega supplement does not have the extra virgin olive oil in it. So what that means is it will not transport the omega-3 to the cell membrane. It's the extra virgin olive oil in this product that actually protects the omega and is stable in the body for a good 35 hours. So our product has proven to restore cellular health. So that was the key, to get that message across and to have them understand that, okay, I just can't go and pick up another Omega product off the pharmacy shelf or from a naturopath, because we know now through the science that Zenzino have done and the evidence and the research that they've shown us is that those products, they're not as stable. So they're oxidizing in the body within about 9 hours. So this is definitely the product of choice when you're talking to pregnant women or women trying to conceive, because it's a completely all natural product and it will get the omega to the cell membrane. So we put them on the product for 120 days. They were not trying to conceive during that time. And in 120 days, we retested Jessie. Jessie's result came back at 3.9 and Max's had come back at 4.1. So during that time, of course, we talked about many other factors that can support a healthy pregnancy, and they have gone on now to conceive, and they're pregnant with a healthy ongoing pregnancy. So that is fantastic. So that is definitely something that you want to be having those conversations with people who you know who may be trying to conceive or who are struggling to conceive. Another big area that you're going to hear people talk about is endometriosis. And we know that about 1 in 9 people now suffer from endometriosis, and it is one of the largest cohort of patients that do come through when they're experiencing infertility. So the one thing I have noticed when we have got patients with endometriosis, that they obviously, and you would know, because I'm sure some of you would know people who have endometriosis, that they have an enormous amount of pain with the inflammation that they have in their body. So this is an inflammatory condition, and they have a lot of pain with periods. They have a lot of painful intercourse. They have a lot of pain throughout their life on a day-to-day basis, because we know that can affect the bowel and all sorts of other areas of the body. So my experience with the balance oil, again, is to anyone you know who has endometriosis, have that discussion with them. Have you had your cellular health checked? Because we know that these women will have really high inflammatory markers, and we know that once we get them onto the balance oil, we can dampen that inflammation down, and it happens really quickly. So the women that I have given the balance oil to that have had endometriosis, they will tell me that their pain levels are somewhere around 8 to 10, or even some of them 12 out of 10 before they get started on the balance oil. And then once they get started, within their first cycle, they are having reduced pain, and it's dropping down to about a 3 to 4 out of 10. So this is a really effective way to also control that symptom of pain and help them through their daily life. But the other thing is, even girls who have painful periods, if they're experiencing pain and you start them on the balance oil, their period will actually start arriving without pain. And that's how effective this is at reducing inflammation in the body. Another area that I have worked with the fertility specialists on is looking at women who have really thin lining or a thin endometrium. So in Australia, we only, as I said, we only have the balance oil, but I have sourced Xenobiotic and I have sourced Extend. So I have been able to give these products to some of our patients. And it's really interesting because the combination of the balance oil and the Xenobiotic, that's a prebiotic fiber. So that combination works so beautifully for women that have a thin lining. And what we started to see was that once we had reduced that cellular inflammation with the balance oil and we'd introduced the Xenobiotic, we'd been able to not only restore the gut health and reduce inflammation in the gut, but when you start to restore the microbiome in the gut and the body starts to heal itself and it starts to work as it should, then the lining of the uterus of these patients that we were giving the product to started to thicken. And some of the fertility specialists were actually astonished that this was happening, and they couldn't believe that it was only due to this nutritional product that we had given them. and they couldn't get their head around it. They thought it was amazing, and they said this is the thickest lining that these women had had, but they couldn't, some of them couldn't believe that it had come from just nutritional changes. But that's how powerful this is. And these are the conversations that you want to be having with these women. The other thing too, when you're talking to women who are having treatment, it's all about also, you know, looking at the toxins in your environment. What are you putting into your body? Looking at the foods that you're eating. Are you eating ultra processed foods? Are you having products that have high fructose syrup? That's a really toxic substance as well. So really start looking at your labels. PBA, a lot of people know about PBA with plastics and reducing that. But are you aware that the receipt papers have really high levels of PBA? And they've done studies to show that if you're touching those receipts with wet hands, that the increase in PBA absorption is about 200 times more. So that's something that a lot of people don't know about as well. So the next area I want to move on to is pregnancy. And of course, everyone wants to have a healthy baby. And so once you get to that part where you've achieved conception and you're continuing through the pregnancy, one of the most critical times for women in that third trimester is when the neural pathways are being developed for the baby. So women who have low levels of omega-3 and don't have that omega-6-3 ratio where it should be, the baby needs to source the DHA, the omega-3, from the mother. And that's a critical time in the pregnancy, that if a mother is deficient in omega-3, then of course the baby does then struggle to source from the mother. And if it can't get from the maternal plasma, it starts to draw the DHA from maternal brain. So that syndrome you hear of, that baby brain, that's actually a real thing. I didn't realize that at first, but it actually is. And what we know is that, we're very, very, very fortunate to have on our scientific advisory board Angela Rizzo, and a lot of her work was done in the area of looking at ADD, ADHD, and looking at the omega-6-3 ratios and the correlation between improvement in those conditions. So we know that there is a direct correlation now that women who have high inflammatory markers and low on omega-3 index, that there is a high correlation with having children that are now seen with also neurological impairment. So they're having ADD, ADHD, all sorts of cognitive problems, learning difficulties, and setting up for issues once they're born and beyond if the diet doesn't change. So Paul Clayton is another fantastic resource, and he has just in his most recent blog talked about the inflamed membrane and the correlation between children who have autism spectrum, ADD, ADHD. So I would encourage everyone to jump on and have a listen and read Paul Clayton's blogs. He's a wealth of information. And I think the next subject he's going to be discussing is infertility and how it is on the decline. So he is on our scientific advisory board as well. So we're very fortunate to have him, and that's a really interesting topic. So I would definitely be looking at drpaulclayton.eu. So definitely have a read of that. So that third trimester, we know that that's a critical part. We also know in pregnancy, your omega-3 index is absolutely critical, that you have an omega-3 index above 8%. And in Australia, there's a lot of research that's being done in this area. And in 2019, the Australian and New Zealand Royal College of Obstetrics and Gynecology released a paper to say that all women from the 12-week gestation need to be tested for their omega-3 index, because what they've discovered is that women who have a low omega-3 index, they actually are more prone to experience early preterm birth. So they're advocating in Australia now that all pregnant women have their omega-3 index checked. But of course, Zinzino have been well ahead of the game. We've been doing this for years. And so if you're talking to any pregnant women, you should be asking them, have you had your omega-3 index? Have you looked at your omega-6-3 ratio? These are critical things to protect her from experiencing early preterm birth. And we also know that there's a strong correlation with women who have low omega-3 index. They will have more prone to being depressed during pregnancy and also in that postpartum period. So there is so many areas that we can be having a conversation with couples who are trying to conceive or during pregnancy and also in that postpartum period. So I hope that that has given you a bit of an insight on how important it is to make sure that you are in balance and that you are taking these products to support a healthy pregnancy and baby.
Thank you so much, Margie. That was amazing to listen to and so interesting. And I'm sure we're going to go out, all of us, and have many conversations about this topic. For the rest, please feel free to open your microphone and unmute yourself and ask Margie questions you have about these topics. There's one in the chat. Margie, why are so many children born with allergies now?
Yes, and that is something that Paul Clayton talks about all the time. There's such a higher prevalence of asthma, allergies, autoimmune diseases. And again, we need to be looking at the root cause of a lot of these conditions. And what we're seeing now is that it's stemming from inflammation. So we know that if we can get someone's ratio below 3:1, those types of conditions, autoimmune disease, asthma, allergies, all those types of conditions start to resolve. And when you think about it, a pregnant woman who is really highly inflamed, she's bathing her baby in that inflammatory environment. So that baby is also being born. And if that diet of the mother continues in those high ultra-processed foods, and then she goes on to have a child and feed that child with also those high inflammatory foods, then they will continue that inflammatory process and it will be ongoing. So yeah, it is something we see all the time. And I really think we can have a powerful impact in turning things around when we start to introduce this product to women and see a change in their health.
Yes, thanks.
Yeah.
There's another question. Are there any particular concerns with milk formula around baby's gut health? Is that something you could, do you have any?
I'm not really experienced in milk formula. I always believe that obviously, you know, breast milk, you know, is obviously important for, and babies born to obtain the microbiome from the mother. But yeah, I don't have any expertise in formula, sorry.
It's a good one for Clayton. He's going to do a talk on gut health soon, so we can add that question to him.
Yeah, exactly. What I wanted to say, because I wanted to make it sort of very practical for people who can have conversations. So one of the things that's really important, because I think people do struggle to bring these things up in conversation, and you know, I just want it to be easy for people to have those conversations with people. So one of the things that I would recommend saying is, have you heard the latest research of omega supplementation? And it just opens up the opportunity to have a question. So particularly if you're talking to someone who has endometriosis, you can just have that conversation. Have you heard the latest omega product that's come on the market that can actually, you know, can restore inflammation and dampen down your inflammatory markers and reduce pain? So have those types of conversations with people.
There's another question in here about, we know that doctors often, or it's recommended in pregnancy not to eat too much fish. Many recommend that. And why is it, you know, safer to take an omega-3 supplement?
Okay, yes. So a lot of women during pregnancy, they will tell me, they'll say, look, I am already eating 2 serves of fish. But as we know, even if you're eating farmed salmon, the nutrient content of the salmon is not the same as wild caught. So unfortunately, the farmed fish are being fed more corn and soy and vegetable produce. And we know that when you're pregnant, you don't want to be consuming certain types of fish that may have a higher mercury level. And that's why the balance oil is a safe option. So the balance oil is like eating wild caught salmon every single day. So this is the purest form of omega-3 that you could possibly have. And the fact that it's combined with that extra virgin olive oil, it is the best thing you can possibly do. So this would be, and as you know, wild caught salmon is very expensive, and most people, well, in Australia, we can't source it even. It's hard to find, and most people's budget go beyond that. So this would be the most economical way and the safest way to eat fish on a daily basis. And of course, if you're vegan or vegetarian, that's okay too, because we have a vegan option and it's sourced directly from marine algae. So that's a good option too.
Perfect. Women with PCOS are usually less fertile. Does balancing the omega-6-3 ratio help with the condition and being able to conceive?
I believe those conditions all stem from inflammatory markers, and I think absolutely if you have someone who has PCOS, I would 100% be saying, let's look at your inflammatory markers, let's look at your cellular health, let's get that under control and allow the body to start, restoring that cellular health. Definitely.
Are there any other nutrients you'd recommend for fetal development?
Absolutely. Tonight I was mainly talking about cellular health, but I would also recommend the entire health protocol for any woman who's pregnant. Most women, when they get pregnant, they'll also experience some constipation. So I'd suggest definitely getting onto the prebiotic fiber, the xenobiotic, to support the gut microbiome and make sure you're having good regular bowel movements, and also the extend. So to also put back those microphytonutrients that you probably are not able to achieve in your normal diet. So I would be looking at a good preconception pregnancy vitamin, or using the extend, the balance oil and the prebiotic fiber. Definitely.
How soon should I give my baby fish oil or balance oil when weaning onto food?
Yeah, this is a really good question. So of course, when you're breastfeeding, that will be coming through to the baby. So that's important. But, Paul Clayton will say you can introduce this as early as you start introducing solids. So I would definitely, if you're still breastfeeding and also starting to introduce foods, the baby will be getting it through your breast milk anyway. But once you're completely off breast milk and you're doing solids, and if you're doing formula, then that's exactly when you just start to introduce it. And remembering that it's dosed on body weight. So you'd be, using small amounts, obviously, to the weight of the baby. So
Ruth,
anyone can take
yes, sir.
Yeah, anyone can take it.
Good. Ruth, our skin specialist, also shares that she sees a lot of skin conditions occur in pregnancy, and that she also believes it's deficiency of the marine fatty acids. Is that something you recognize in
and I think also
plans?
that's one of the first things we notice when people start to take the balance oil. The skin obviously improves, and that's actually one thing I said to my mums, is that it will also improve the skin elasticity. So when you're pregnant and you're growing, one of the big things women get really worried about is stretch marks and things like that. So it's also going to aid in that skin elasticity, and they say it improves by about 20%. So, you know, that's really dramatic. So yeah, it will help with those conditions during pregnancy.
Is it safe to blood test in pregnancy? That's another
Yes,
question.
absolutely. It's critical. And in fact, in Australia now, they're advocating every single woman be tested. So, and this is a thing, because if you haven't had that conversation in that preconception phase, and then you get to the pregnancy and you're sharing this information, some people think, oh, is it too late? No, it is never too late. Because like I said, it is absolutely critical that we find out what the omega-3 index is, what the ratios are, because it's so important that we correct that imbalance and provide that baby with the essential fatty acids to support neural development and its cognitive development. So that's really critical that we test all pregnant women.
There's another question around newborns. So would you recommend giving them balance oil, or just stick to breast milk until they are eating solids?
If you're breastfeeding, you don't need to give the newborn the balance oil, because everything that you're eating and everything, all the nutrients that you're taking is actually getting passed on to the baby. So you don't need to give it additional balance oil. It's getting enough through the breast milk.
That's good. I think that was it for the questions. Oh wait, there's oh no, thank you. And also there's someone who shared their experience on the reduced pain, like you said, mentioned with the regulation of periods and ovulation. So it's been on the product that confirms what you just told us about reducing pain and painful periods. So that's really, really good.
Yeah, it's such a, I mean, you know, all women get periods. So these are conversations that women can have with women. Men can have with women too. Dads can have with their daughters, you know, or people they know, because, you know, it's something that people don't need to live with. This is something we can support and reduce their level of pain and make life easier. So yeah, I've been absolutely amazed. The mothers who have said to me, you know, they were using it for their own reasons, and then that they were also giving the balance oil to their daughters, and they said, just by surprise, they said, you're not going to believe it, my daughter's period arrived and she had no pain at all. So you know, that's amazing.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah. There's a last question, and I'm not sure if it's different in Australia, but in the Netherlands where I live, and I know in Norway too, a lot of midwives and doctors don't know much about omega-3s, and they might mention it in a conversation, but not really recommend it. And so do you know, is that something that's, I guess it's something about education and something that needs to change, but do you have any ideas around that?
Absolutely. You know, when I decided to share this information with fertility specialists and doctors, and I started to go to even antenatal clinics, and that was one of the questions I was asking, because everyone knows about putting on a preconception vitamin, but the importance and of essential fatty acids and balancing that and giving omega-3s, I was blown away too, because I actually asked these obstetricians, I said, what are you recommending an omega supplement? And they go, oh no, I don't even talk about that. So, you know, we need to have more conversations. We need to be educating. And unfortunately, as you said, doctors are not trained in this unless they take a special interest in nutrition or integrative holistic medicine. This is not the area of expertise. And even one of my fertility specialists that I was working with, because I tested him and I was telling him about the product, and he actually said to me, Margie, he said, Margie, I don't know anything about nutrition. I said, I know. I said, that's why you need me to help your patients. So yeah, they need to be educated because it is a whole another area. But, you know, pharmaconutrition is on the it is a trend, and we're going to hear more and more and more. There's a lot of science and research being done in this area in food science, and we're going to see a massive shift in the next decade. There's going to be more talk about cellular health. There's going to be more talk about gut health. That's going to be in the forefront because we know that what we can do with these products can actually turn health around and really assist with the public health crisis that we have at the moment. So we're going to hear more and more and more about it. And I think then doctors will start to come on board more as well.
For sure. And so let's go out and educate people. It's been really, really nice to listen to you, Margie. And I'm sure we're going to have you on another call very soon to talk more about this. Thank you so much. And if there's any questions that you would come up with, please send them to one of us, and we could always ask Margie to answer them in a message. And thank you so much for joining us tonight, and have a nice evening further. See you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.